Chris Lowe. We're joined live and in person here at the Texas Roadhouse by the great Jay Graham. Coach Graham, welcome back to Rocky Top, and thanks for coming out here to Texas Roadhouse.
Thank you. Just a great opportunity to be here.
You know, we've had a lot of conversations over the years, and you and I have always joked about doing a radio show together. So here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Good stuff.
Jay not only could coach football back in his day, I have it on good authority from my good friend, the guy who opened a few holes for him, Bubba Miller.
Yes.
That you were the king of nicknames. You were better at giving nicknames to guys on the team than anybody else in the team. Is that true?
That's true. I was pretty good at that. Yes,
even what was the famous one with Peyton on the end around or the bootleg against Alabama in '95? You call him? He looked like Ichabod Crane. See, I'm telling you, putting all your business out in the street, Jay.
Bringing all that stuff back.
But Bubba still laughs at that one all the time.
Bubba's
he said that you came
guy,
up with that one after the game. He said Peyton looked, because he was wide open. It popped wide open. And he said, he said you were the one in the locker room after said Peyton looked like Ichabod running around as he strutted into the end zone. But it's great to have you here. It really is. Good to have you back on Rocky Top. You know, when you got this opportunity, you know, when Jeremy called, and you've been to a lot of places. I remember back in the day being when you were at South Carolina, at Texas A&M, Florida State. The lure to come back home, but not just to come back home, but to come back and be a part of something that you obviously feel like is building sort of something bigger and better. What was that like for you?
Well, it was just a great opportunity. This is a place that developed me in so many ways, you know, as a person, as a man. Tennessee is a very, very important part of my life, and having this chance to come back is always special to me, you know. And just watching them on tape, because we played common opponents when I was at A&M, you just saw just the physicality and different things change the way they were playing football, Tennessee. So, you know, you could see that it was starting to head in the right direction.
Now, this is not your first stint here as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
How different, or how is it different from, you know, coming here in 2012? You know, because as he talked about it, building your Tennessee's second longest winning streak in the Power Five, you know, coming off of that 6-game win streak to end the season. How is it different from the first time around?
I just think the mentality of the players and just watching on tape how they were playing, you know, the level, the effort they were playing with. You could see that on tape. And once I got here, the difference is so many things are just streamlined, and, you know, everybody's clear and on the same page as far as how we're going to do things.
How easy was it to walk in the building when you've worked with Jeremy, you've worked with D.A., you've worked with Jim Chaney, you and Jimmy Brumbaugh shared an office at UT Chattanooga.
Yes.
So I mean, like there was a comfort level in knowing half of the guys here.
Yes, and also the respect of these guys as coaches. I mean, they've done a phenomenal job, you know, and they think how I think, and I think that's very important when you go into it. You don't have to figure that part out.
You know, I hit on a minute ago, Jay. You coached a lot of good running backs.
Yes.
Pretty fair running back in your day. You had some get up and go. I never forget talking to you at South Carolina. I think it was after Marcus Lattimore's breakout game as a freshman against Georgia. You carried it like 900 times that game.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't say you all, because you're not at South Carolina anymore. You're at Tennessee. But South Carolina beat Georgia. And you talk about sort of him, all the different things that he had as a running back that you were looking for. Now, as you go out now, and not only this roster, but as you go out and you start looking for running backs, in this league, what are the 3 or 4 things that you are looking for in a running back, and what do you got to have if you're going to be a special player in this league at that position?
I think the first thing you got to have is you got to feel some way about winning and losing. I think you got to have a certain amount of desire, you know, and we can develop that, you know, and do some things with that, but you must have that. You know, it's every week in this league, you're going to have guys with the same ability that you have. What are you going to do differently in order to win on that play? You know, so that's first what you got to have. And then the ability, you know, do you fit the system and what we're trying to do? And, you know, that's a very important part of it, the size and the speed and, you know, maybe change the direction. Whatever you have, what do you do well? What stands out from everyone else? You know, there's so many different styles of backs. You know, I think it's very important. But you got to be physical, especially playing in this conference, and the type of defensive linemen you face and linebackers. I mean, you got to have a certain level of physicality to you, but also the intelligence to understand, what you're looking at, the process to get better. Yeah.
Have you had a chance to really address your guys here yet much? I'm talking about the running backs, that room yet?
Yes, we've had a couple meetings, just the initial meetings of things, and I'm trying to, you start learning each other because I think it's so much about trust. So we're building that trust right now and connecting in those position meetings.
Now, a couple of years ago, you had the beginning of the early signing period, so that changed how you do things, how January's handled. This year, now February's a dead month, for recruiting.
Yeah.
So how has that changed from a standpoint of, is it as a staff and you personally, do you just go in and is it just spring, or how do you kind of juggle all that?
Well, you still can have contact. They just can't be on your campus.
Sure.
So there's still a good amount of recruiting going on right now as far as either evaluation, once you've evaluated that young man, trying to set up things that are going to happen in March and April. So there's a lot of recruitment going on, and that's an everyday thing. On the other side of that, you're just evaluating last season, going through your self-scout and talking about some things, and also bringing coaches in. Either high school coach or whoever it is that wants to talk about their programs, but also you're looking to bring in some coaches and see what they do at different colleges.
You've been here about a month.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of itching for the start of spring practice?
Yes. I'm ready for it,
What, kind of take us through what will you be looking for that first week or two? Of course, you'll have 1 week, and then you'll have a spring break off week, and then you get right back after it. But what will you be looking for out of the gate, out of your group? And, is that something you've already explained to those guys? I expect this is the standard?
Yes. And the first thing you're looking for is effort. I mean, that's it. You got to come out with a certain level of strain in order to get better. Right now we're going through morning workouts. It's not in the morning, but our fourth quarter drill. But learning to have a certain amount of focus and attention to detail and effort is what you're looking for every day.
I mentioned Jay a minute ago about having been at different places. How much does that help you as a coach? You coach under different coaches. You've been at different places, fan bases, facilities. I just wonder now that you're up in your coaching career.
Yes.
How much as you come now back?
Different schools, what helped you win, will get you to that point. Mm-hmm. And I think that either with a player, facilities, whoever you deal with, I think that's the most important thing is understanding what it takes to win and being around coaches who feel the same.
And you've coached under coaches who've won national championships.
Yes.
Jimbo Fisher, Steve Spurrier, by the way, you got a pretty good Spurrier impersonation, or is that huh?
I wouldn't do it right now, but
Jay.
Yeah.
Okay, Jay. What do you think? You
that's pretty good right there now.
I've heard. I've had 25 years of it.
Nobody does the impersonations better than him.
No,
that's pretty good.
You ought to hear Austin do Jeremy Pruitt. He is I'm telling you, if you drew a curtain between us right now, Jay, and I didn't know who was sitting on the other side of the curtain, I promise you I wouldn't know if it was Jeremy Pruitt or Austin Price.
That's pretty good.
I got home and Casey said, "You got to hire Jay." You know what I'm saying?
You're funny. I don't know if I should laugh at that. That's my boss.
I was going to say that's your boss.
I'm not going to laugh at that.
One day we're going to do a show, and I'm going to do the whole show as Spurrier, and he's going to do Pruitt. And we'll do the whole show like that.
Well, everybody says, "Did you ever do it for him?" I said, "I think I did it one time," and he didn't really respond.
Believe it or not, there was a guy who was a walk-on at Alabama a few years ago who could do a spot-on Saban. He had the mannerisms, the hands, and everything. And he actually did it. I think it was. Of course, you got to catch Saban at just the right time because that's never funny, except on his terms. And a lot of coaches are like that.
Sure. Yeah.
But he did it for him, and I think it was so spot on that even Saban maybe gave him a little bit of an applause for it. So I think down deep coaches like it. What's the old, when you impersonate a
imitation
coach,
is the greatest form of flattery.
Yes.
All right, let's go ahead and take our second break on the Nation. It's great to have Jay Graham here on location with us at the Texas Roadhouse.
Coming up, we're going to break down who the best intramural basketball players were back in the 90s. Because there was a lot of good ones.
Yes.
You know what? I might really put him on the spot because we had this debate with Aaron Hayden a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
The greatest collection of running backs on campus at Tennessee at one time in the history. And there's sort of a running debate. Your all's collection, and then you had a couple guys, a couple Travises, and you had Jamal Lewis. And we might talk a little bit about that on the other side of the break. This is The Nation, and we'll be back here at the Texas Roadhouse in just 1 minute.
Now, back to Chris and Austin.
Welcome back into the show. It's The Nation, Austin Price and Chris Lowe, and a third member tonight.
Show's never been better.
No, we're honored to have Jay Graham, running backs coach here at Tennessee, former running back great. And I tell you, Jay, we were talking on the break about all the different states when you think about the great running backs. And I know Auburn gets credit for being running back you, and Georgia's in there. But, boy, you think back the last 25 years on this campus, the guys who've toted the football in the orange. I mean, there's a long list of them that went on to play not only professionally, and one we didn't even mention a minute ago. I still contend, and I know I'm old, that as good a running back that I ever saw play in orange was Chuck Webb.
Yes.
Now, Chuck ripped his knee up his junior year, and it never was the same.
Still went in the second round.
Still went, but when he was healthy here, he was as good. I can still remember him at the Cotton Bowl at 89, zigzagging his way through the Arkansas defense for like 280-some yards.
Yes.
But it's it's phenomenal when you think, just again, going back the last 25, 30 years, the number of guys that played that position at an elite level. I wonder from your perspective, to be a part of that fraternity, a part of that brotherhood, what it's like.
Oh, it's amazing. When I first came to school at Tennessee, we had Charlie Garner, Aaron Hayden, and James Stewart, Little Man Stewart.
Right.
I mean, so the first day in drills, we go through the rope drill, and they go through it, and then I go through it, and I was like, how did that go? Because Aaron Hayden, that was my big brother. I said, how was that? He was like, that was bad. So I had to learn how to do these things,
right.
So they were always great teachers. And that's what you get when you're around those guys is, if you can have that kind of culture, guys will keep getting better through that thing.
So when did they brought in Charlie the year after you were here? When did they bring in Charlie Garner?
The year before.
The year before.
His senior year.
Yeah, they brought him after the freshman year from Aaron and
That's right.
Man.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And see, that was before the internet, before, and I've heard funny stories about, because you got those two guys as freshmen.
Yes.
Aaron and Little Man have great years.
Yes.
And then lo and behold, Tennessee goes out and gets the best junior college running back in the nation, Charlie Garner, who played forever in the NFL.
Yes.
And they bring in you're the top high school running back in the country. You still never, I kidded you about this earlier, you still never explained to me how it was you lived in Kannapolis, North Carolina, but played at Concord High School.
Well, I was right there
we need an
on
investigation into that.
I was right. I was about 100 yards within the city limits of Kannapolis.
I'm sure that caused some gnashing of the teeth there locally.
Oh, yeah.
And I've got my own Concord roots. I've told you this. My first job in the business was for the Concord Tribune.
Yes.
And that was a huge rivalry. A.O. Brown High School in Kannapolis
Yes.
and in Concord High School.
I
tell you what, let's let Jay participate in your favorite part of the show, AP, the Marathon Question of the Week. Discover how a full tank of freedom from Marathon will take you wherever you go. Marathon, fueling the American spirit. All right, I'm not going to put you completely on the spot, Jay, because I know you're not going to choose just one guy. But all those running backs we mentioned.
Yes.
Okay. If you picked out 2 or 3 of them that you like to watch play the most, and I know you've seen tape and played with a lot of them. Okay, you were on the field with a bunch of them, and others you've seen tape of them. Who's the guy that you just, as a football aficionado, as a fan, as a guy who played the game at the highest level, give me a couple of them that you enjoyed watching the most and why?
Well, I remember, the Cobweb and, both of those guys. I mean, they made so many plays. You're talking about Chuck Webb and Reggie Cobb.
Oh, yeah.
And I enjoyed watching Chuck Webb. I mean, he just made so many plays. He was just such an exciting back, and he was so talented. And you just couldn't tackle him. You couldn't catch him in the open field. I mean, he made a bunch of plays here. But you keep talking. I mean, Charlie Garner. I mean, Aaron Hayden and James Stewart, watching those guys, their senior years.
If you could build the perfect Tennessee back using parts of each guy, what would it be?
I think Aaron had the power. He just had so much power, and he was elusive. but his power, he could break tackles with that. James Stewart had great hands. You know, he could catch the ball out in the open field.
Right.
He was for a bigger guy. He could do all that stuff as far as route running. If you go with moves and making guys miss, that's going to be Charlie Garner.
Yeah.
You know, he was a guy that, I remember, I think it was Louisville. He had like a double spin move. I mean, he could make plays that the average back couldn't make.
You know, the only guy, I shouldn't say the only guy, the guy on this campus now at that position, of course, I was around South Carolina a bunch when Jadeveon Clowney showed up, and I've never seen a high school kid show up on a campus who looked more like an NFL player physically than Clowney. You were around.
Yes.
But at the running back position, Jay, the first day I laid eyes on Jamal Lewis, when he showed up on campus, he looked like an NFL running back.
Yes.
Chiseled out of stone,
power,
could run, home run threat, had it all.
Yes, he could do it all. And the size. I mean, you come and walk on campus as a freshman, you're 225 pounds. You know, he had that.
I'll never forget.
Let's not forget about the bridge between Jay and Jamal, Mark Levine, who knew that blocking scheme in '97 really well.
Mm-hmm. You're going to get on Philip Fulmer's good side. Keep that up.
Hey, I think Coach Fulmer, all these years later, would be the first to acknowledge that was not.
But let's not throw Philip completely under the bus. I think there might have been some pass pro assignment concerns in that whole deal too. But
that's what I'm talking about.
Your good buddy Brent Hubbs loves to tell the story about Jamal. Rodney Garner, who was assistant coach here then and was, the point man in recruiting Jamal. I remember Brent asking him. That was my first year here at the Tennessee in 97, first year on the beat. And I vividly remember him saying something to Rodney. Now, is Jamal, because you just mentioned he was 225 pounds. You rarely see guys that are 225 pounds as a running back at 18 years old that stay a tailback. They may move to H-back or linebacker or fullback. And I'll never forget Brent asking Rodney, he's a fullback, right? And Rodney looked at him and said, fullback. You know how Rodney, fullback. He's the best damn tailback in the country. And I promise you, when you see him run, you'll figure that out. And boy, from the first time I saw him carry the football, and remember, on that same team, you had Travis Henry, you had Travis Stevens, you had a guy named Sean Bryson who, for the good of the team, went to fullback and played forever in the NFL at running back. So all those different eras, those different groups that we just talked about, it's just – I really love going back down memory lane because I remember all those. I'm old enough to remember every one of them.
By the way,
AP's so young, he didn't remember all.
Please, I remember all those. Don't forget, if you're going to build that perfect Tennessee tailback, you got to use Mose Phillips' watch as a part of that as well.
You were telling us a minute ago in the break, Jay. This is a great story. Mose, Nashville, the pride of Nashville, Tennessee, has the greatest play in Tennessee football history.
Great call by John Ward.
And a great that people won't remember because Tennessee lost the game to South Carolina. You were at that game was a high school recruit.
Yes. I was standing in the corner of the end zone because they were bringing all the prospects down. I was at South Carolina, at the end of the game so we can get off the field. But I saw that run, that short pass, and I guess it was a swing pass into to the field. And, I mean, he broke every tackle twice. I mean, he did so many. I mean, it was an amazing play.
I think Mose was a high school quarterback, was he not?
Yep.
And that was what, that staff, Coach Majors, Coach Fulmer, they did such a good job of taking guys that were quarterbacks and putting them at other positions, taking guys that were talented tailbacks. How many Chiefs linebackers were high school tailbacks? And good ones.
And that was my point a minute ago about rarely do you see a guy like Jamal show up on campus anymore that's 225 that stays as a running back or tailback.
True.
Josh Jacobs, the great player at Alabama who just had a terrific rookie season in the NFL, he was a quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and he wasn't even that highly recruited coming out.
And a guy Coach Pruitt, really helped kind of find.
He was a late. Saban's told me this. He was a very late take.
Yes.
At Alabama.
Yeah.
Josh Jacobs.
And that was all Coach Pruitt too. And I've heard that story.
He's one of those guys that they probably weren't going to take, and then something happened. They missed out on somebody else, or there was a couple things. Yeah, it happens in recruiting. And at the very end, they said, "Hey, we do have a spot for you. Come on." And of course, the rest is history. In the last couple of years of me watching college ball, when you talk about a guy who can do everything, who can pass pro, who can catch the football, who can run, he's about as good as I've seen.
Yes,
Jacobs.
He's very good. Very good football player.
So, I tell you what, let's go ahead and take our third break. This is great. We'll talk some more. little bit of everything. We might even get.
We're going to break down the intramural basketball. When
we got to do some intramural
basketball. I tease that.
We got to do that.
Double A was a good basketball player. Terry Fair is a heck of a point guard.
Yes. He liked to shoot outside too much.
Fair, he was a gun. Fair was a gun. All right, let's take our final break here on The Nation. He's Jay Graham. He's Austin Price. I'm Chris Lowe. We'll be back in just 1 minute. Sincerely for spending part of your Sunday evening with us. We love doing this show, The Nation. I'm Chris Lowe, Austin Price. Special guest tonight, Mr. Jay Graham, on location. All right, Jay, we teased this earlier. Austin did.
Yes.
Intramural hoops.
Mm-hmm.
It was huge back in the 90s.
Yes.
And some hotly contested contests there in the old Hyper building.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the best intramural hoops player from football that you can remember?
Wow, that's a tough one right there. Andy McCullough was really good. You know, he could have been a college basketball player. He was a good player. Peerless Price was good.
Who's the best trash talker?
I don't know. Probably one of those guys. Andy was pretty good at it. You know, you got to be a little funny to get that done. And Andy was very funny, so he probably was the best trash talker.
So T Fair had game. He didn't meet a lot of shots he didn't like. Is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, he was always trying to hit threes. You know,
his brother played at UConn.
Oh yeah,
yes, and Terry could play. You know, but his outside game wasn't as good as he thought it was.
Now,
the best part of that is we mentioned him, and I looked at my phone that's sitting up here on the ledge, and Terry had just called me.
Now, did Peyton play any intramural hoops?
No.
Probably a smart decision
Peyton
on his part.
Was doing, quarterback drops somewhere.
I was going to say, quarterback drops or watching film probably.
But we would all show up to watch, especially when it got to the championship games and stuff like that. So.
Now, was Rolo still? Do you still have his Lakers team back then? Still?
Yes.
That goes way back, man. Lakers were when I was in school in the 80s.
And he do some recruiting. He gets some guys, and he has some guys on his team. So
I tell this story. We had my buddy Tony White on with us one night, and can you imagine this happening this day and age? When I was in school, the fraternities every spring would have a 3-on-3 tournament. They had one of those outdoor courts behind the fraternity.
Yes.
And I got this, I was buddies with Tony White and Anthony Richardson, two starters on the basketball team. Heck, I got them on my team. Mm-hmm. They were playing on my team. We lost in the championship game, because I was such a defensive liability.
Yeah.
That was the main. But now, Tony, you heard Tony say that I could hold my own shooting the basketball. But we lost to Rolo's team. He had like Tim McGee, guys, former players were back in school, finishing up their degree. And we're out playing on an outdoor court. This is like 85, 86. Can you imagine this day and age with Twitter and Instagram? I mean, it'd be all over the place.
Yeah, Twitter's changed everything, so I couldn't imagine that happening.
So where do you go from here? I mean, for the next couple of weeks as you head into spring ball, will you focus on anything in particular with your group, or you just kind of continue the morning workouts? And that's another guy that you worked with was Coach Fitzgerald, because you all were together at South Carolina.
Yes.
I mean, there's just a lot of familiarity.
Yes, love Fitzy. His energy and, how much he cares for those guys. He's every day he's going to be on fire now. He's going to have a lot of juice, and I think the guys love that, So I think going into these next 2 weeks, we're going to try to get some install in. Just try to talk about some offense. So first we watch the tape and do our self-scout, and then we talk to the players, and they're watching the tape and going through and talking about how we can improve. So you're doing your first 2 or 3 days of install going, and then you'll reinstall those days, once you start practice.
How important is it, Jay, more than ever in today's game, the way it's changed, is to have 2 or 3 guys at that position, guys that, ideally can do different things, but it's just hard to get through a season or a game anymore. A game, heck, but let alone a game as a season, unless you have 2 or 3 guys, they can split the duties.
It's amazing. Sometimes I pause because I'm, you're on the field with these guys and you get used to it. But sometimes I stand on the field. It might be a timeout right before they start. You realize how big these guys have gotten over the years. I mean, there's some big guys. So the physical pounding that you take at the position, you need to have 3 guys, and usually with different skill set. That's what I try to do. That's key for you for the offense to be able to play 3 guys in a game.
When you head to the practice field, you've been on the practice field with Jeremy before, but he was the defensive coordinator at the time at Florida State, not the head coach.
Yes.
Do you perceive it to be different? Or do you think you'll be the same guy?
I think he's the same guy. Just seeing him in fourth quarter drills. I mean, he's got energy. He's in all the drills. Just coaching guys up on the things that are important. And Jeremy's the type of guy, he don't want you to just say good job. He wants you to be detailed about what you tell him. What's good? What are they doing right? What can they improve on? And I think that's key.
You go back to Florida State with Jeremy, is that right?
Yes.
Is that your all's first? Do you remember working with him then, thinking this guy has got a shot to be a head coach?
You could tell. I mean, just the way he ran things, and coming in as a defensive coordinator. I mean, you look at it, we had the number one offense, but we had the number one defense. And you felt like you had two head coaches. Our head coach was the offensive coordinator, and he was like a head coach in running the defense. So, it was the best of both worlds.
Well, you've been a part of, some really good teams. You've been as a player, then obviously as a coach. When you kind of get that competitive spirit, and Coach Pruitt talked about that from the get-go, getting that competitive spirit in practice.
Yes.
Where it's just, it's just insanely competitive at times. From the kids may not like each other for a few minutes because they each want to win. Each side wants to win. When you kind of get that going a little bit, how much does that change the culture of a place?
I mean, it's key because you got to develop some intense feelings about winning and losing. So that's that competitive edge you got to have, and having it in every drill. I mean, and bringing that energy as a coach is key. I mean, you just can't show up and stand there with your hands in your pocket.
Some of the best stories I love hearing about those teams in the 90s from Coach Fulmer is he said the hardest job I had was keeping Cutcliffe and Chief from killing each other because both the offense and defense were going at it so hard.
Oh, yeah.
But that's what separates great teams. I mean, you go to Ohio State right now and Alabama and Clemson. I know that's what you guys are building toward at Tennessee.
Yes.
You want that kind of competitiveness on the practice field every day, where offense versus defense, because when you get in the games, sometimes it's not as hard in the games as it is on the practice field.
And that's how it should be. I mean, you have so many reps you can have in practice, and they have to be meaningful reps. So, you got to be full speed. You got to have some energy about yourself when you do that, because that's where you get better.
Before we get you out the door, who was one guy that maybe you didn't like to go against in practice that but then you always respected that guy just because he was a tough opponent?
Leonard Little.
Number one.
Because he didn't care. It was like game day to him.
Oh, yeah.
The look in his eyes and everything, and that got me better going against him.
Another North Carolina guy. We did this last week. Think of when Tennessee's been at its best. I don't think it's any coincidence. We got about 30 seconds, Jay.
Yes.
Think of the way they've gone into that state, North Carolina, and gotten great football players.
And
that's right.
And you're in charge of that.
Yes,
so,
sir.
Good luck.
Jay, it's been awesome, man. We really appreciate you coming by tonight. Good luck to you. I know you're ready to get your family here in town
yes, sir.
and get cranked up. Jay Graham with us tonight on The Nation.